Or, I don't know, which way have you got to move? Hey everyone, this is Drew from Hello House.
Hey, I'm Scott.
Great to have you on the call today. So we are going live in our Facebook page, so the Hello House Facebook page, the Get Buyer Ready Facebook group, and we're also live on our YouTube channel. So just as we mentioned, I'm Drew Innes, the CEO of Hello House, and this is Scott, the founder of Hello House.
Indeed.
And so, mate, I thought just before we get into today's segment, which is going to be fantastic, because I know it's top of mind for everyone. How can they, unlock that 40% of the market that most people don't even ever get to see, the pre and off market listings? And so we're going to be diving into that soon. Had a couple of people reach out and ask, what differentiates Hello House from a buyer's agent? And so I thought we should address that right up front. Who are we, what we do, and what makes us different. So we are probably Australia's #1 property negotiation as a service business. That's ultimately what we do. So if you have the capacity to find your dream home or investment property, and you're part of the Get Buyer Ready Facebook group, and you're working with our buyer coaches to give you further directions and instructions on how to find, then what we do is we then analyse its value. We insulate you from the selling agent, so you never have to get involved in those agent games. The moment we do that, we relieve you of all of the stress and anxiety of the buying process, because now you've got expert representation on your side. So we will then negotiate the purchase of your property on the best terms and obviously the lowest price. And at the time that we close that deal for you, that lowest price is the lowest market price. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what do we mean by that? Well, at the moment, our average saving below target price for our clients is currently in excess of $56,000 at the moment, right? And I've put a prior post in this group talking about, the stats for August, where our largest saving was 115. The last 12 months, one of the largest deals we saved was, over $500,000. And so, but let's sort of keep this real. For an everyday buyer, we essentially are stepping in your shoes and just insulating you from the selling agent. And why do we do that? Because we believe, we are absolutely mission driven here. Our goal is to transform the way Australians buy property. That is our goal. We live and breathe it every day, because we just think an everyday person that's buying their dream home or investment shouldn't have to go it alone. I mean, for God's sake, it's the 21st century. Why on earth should someone have to go it alone buying their life's largest asset without any expert representation? All right, so I just wanted to get that point across. Now, in your words, mate, what differentiates us from a buyer's agent? What are the 2 or 3 or 4 key things?
Well, I think the #1 thing for us at Hello House is we don't have a horse in the race, right? So we're not trying to force a buyer or sell a buyer into purchasing any particular property. The purchasers that we work with find their own properties, and we then analyse and assist them to make that dream come true. So we don't have a horse in the race. We've got nothing to push, which I think is a big difference, because the feedback in the industry is that buyers agents will pigeonhole you into certain properties because they're volume driven. It's a transaction business. Second thing is a buyer's agent only gets paid when they get the deal done, right? So it's motivation for them to absolutely get you into a property as soon as possible, because they don't get paid otherwise.
Yep.
And they're not financially aligned. So they actually get paid typically the more you spend, because it's pegged to the sale price. So there's not really a financial incentive for them to work hard in terms of negotiating you the absolute lowest price. So the difference with Hello House is we charge a performance fee based on how much money we save below the client's target price that they set. So the client's always in control.
Yep.
The client finds their own property, sets their target price, and we can assist them with analysing to arrive at the right price to have to pay for it. And then we charge them transparently out of the savings we make them. So that's probably the biggest difference for me. The other big thing I think people need to be wary of with the buyer's agent is you'll see it in all their marketing that they focus heavily on the ability to buy and secure property off market.
Yep.
That's why it's a good thing to talk about today, to give you the tools and tricks and tips of mine to be able to do this yourself and apply those same strategies.
Yep.
But when I was an agent sitting in that seat for 2 decades, we used to sell to buyers agents all the time, and we did so because buyers agents would come through with a qualified buyer, and they would secure the property off market by paying an absolute premium with a cherry on top. Agents love it. That's the reason why buyers agents have got good relationships with agents, is because agents love selling to them because they sell for huge money and very quickly. So if you want to be a buyer that pays someone a luxury tax basically to go and find you a property, shoehorn you into it, and then have you pay overs for it, and they're pegged to how much you pay overs for, then that's a dangerous service, I think. So there's some great buyers agents out there. I'm talking about the mass market. I saw a stat the other day that said 3,000 new buyers agents have come into the marketplace in the last 2 years. I think that was from PK Gupta. And that's interesting, right? There's maybe 6,000 or 8,000 buyers agents competing for about 12,000 transactions a year nationally. So less than 3% of the market in Australia. You've got to dig really, really deeply into who is the right fit for you, who understands your local market, who's not a volume business, and who's going to give you the service. There is, as I say, some great buyers agents out there, but you've really got to do your homework to make sure that you're not getting ripped off. So that's
perfect.
The biggest difference for me between what we do at Hello House and typically what a buyer's agent does.
Yeah, perfect. And so just before we push into the subject of the day, I just also wanted to sort of recap on the whole motivation behind what led to the development of Get Buyer Ready, and so we did a deep dive into the industry stats between the finance industry and the real estate industry, and what we found was the average buyer experience was absolutely horrendous, like when you're looking at it from a statistics perspective. And so the Get Buyer Ready was born out of what we identified was a definite need in the market to close the gap between clients getting finance ready and transacting, and then not becoming an industry statistic in that period where they're now walking around with a conditional approval. They now know what their budget is, so they can get targeted on where they're looking to shop and what type of asset they're looking for, and so on and so forth. But they're basically, up until Get Buyer Ready, have been left to their own devices. And so we produce this out of a definite need for somebody to step in and solve that problem, because there are plenty of overpriced real estate courses out there. There's no question whatsoever, and if I was doing some clever marketing speak, it'd be along the lines of, gone are the days where you have to actually pay an absolute premium for training that's still not going to allow you to analyse and negotiate like a pro, right? And so we know your average buyer is costing themselves upwards of $100,000 making a decision to go it alone. We know that because we've put a value on.
We've quantified
the intent.
Those pain points.
Yeah, we've quantified the pain points, and we've put a value on the intangibles that people aren't experiencing out of their hip pocket, but they're paying for it somewhere. And then also, layering in our saving below target price. So I think that probably has addressed the question that we had: what sets us apart from buyer's agents? And so, if that resonates with you, if you sort of feel that you have got the capacity to find a property with a bit of guidance by our team, then I suppose it begs the question: do you have the skill to come up against a well-trained selling agent and not cost yourself $100,000 in the process?
Yep.
All right, let's dive in. Securing a home off market. This is buddy the key question on everyone's lips, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do I do it?
And we get heaps of questions about this as well in the community. So I think it's relevant that we talk about a few easy strategies and free things that people can do themselves at home. They can apply this fast. It's really simple, and it's going to give you an opportunity to try and knock out your buyer competition. That's what you're doing. You're knocking out the competition and the risk of paying an emotional premium or competing against someone else that's going to pay an emotional premium against you. And you're also reducing the seller's costs at the same time because they're not going to have to pay an agent's fee, which is on average 2% nationally.
Yep.
Varies greatly between the states, but if you put a rough rule of thumb on it, it's a 2% saving, plus any marketing costs.
Yeah.
And any cost of the property that might be sitting there vacant if they have to kick a tenant out to sell the property and style it and the rest of it. So it could be a big saving and a motivator for a seller if you can find the right property off market yourself,
Yep.
and if you can find the right seller who's motivated to sell to you. So yeah, I just wanted to walk through really how you track down an owner's details.
Yep.
Because it's not easy to do for some people. They haven't done this before. So it's how we go behind the scenes to find someone's information that might not be openly available. That's the first thing. And then how to control that negotiation to secure it on your terms, and most importantly, your timeline. Because for people that are flipping properties or people that plan to renovate or add value to it, or even if you're just buying your own family home, if you can time it perfectly, that will go a long way to being a better deal, because it might be that you need to sell a property first and you need longer
Yep.
settlement terms. It might be that you need access to get trades through and quotes and things like that as well. So it's about winning it on the best price, but also about the right timeline and terms.
Okay, cool. And we've got a question that we're going to address as well. So, I mean, do you want to dive into the first thing? How do you actually track down an owner's contact detail if it's not listed for sale?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of ways that you can go about it really fast, but they're not going to get you the best outcome. So I'm going to get those out of the way first,
Okay.
which is you could look at the property online, type the address in and Google it. Typically, you'll find the last time it's sold or the last time it was leased, and that's going to be attached to a real estate agent. So the easy way would be to go through that route. But what you're going to come up against as a challenge is that what I just said to you is a potential saving, and getting rid of the agent's fees is then going to be back in play,
Yeah.
because you've engaged the agent. They know they've got a potential interested party on that property. They'll have the owner's details. They'll reach out, but of course they'll put their hand up for a fee for introducing you as a buyer. So that's not the ideal way, but it's the easiest way to cheat if you need to do something in a hurry and it's the right property. The smarter way of going about it to try and find the owner's details direct is, of course, to knock on the door first. So determine whether or not it's rented or whether it's owner occupied. So if you can do that, if it's tenanted, it's going to be slightly harder to find the owner's details. If it's owner occupied, then it's a case of doing a door knock. Their phone number may be online if you Google the address.
Yep.
You might be able to leave a note under the door or in the letterbox.
Yep.
I've found a really good way to track owners down as well, if they're owner occupiers, is to door knock the neighbours or leave a note on the neighbours, because they very often know where their their long-term neighbour is or where they live or how to get hold of them. So that's an easy way to do that. Some other ways that we've done it recently for clients to try and unearth an owner that was hard to come by was on Facebook. So social media, whether it be LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, if you type in the owner's names, you very likely get an idea of that surname or that name within a certain suburb. So if they're
Yep.
not a long way away, then you may be able to match that up reasonably easy.
Yep.
So we've done that quite a few times as well. So I think if you can think outside the box of how to find these people, start with door knocking and Googling the address. And if it's, worst case scenario, then it's to go back to the rental agent or back to the selling agent who have last dealt with the property, because they'll have the owner's details for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing. So I was, I know it's sort of somewhat related, but it's not in Australia. When I was getting my ski lodge in Japan, I was speaking to someone about it, and they said to me, Drew, you have to behave as if everything is for sale, but nothing's advertised.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's a good-
and I was just,
line.
and I'm like, what? And he's like, everything is for sale at a price, right? But nothing often is advertised. So he said the best way to find any property is to actually knock on the door and confront the owner.
And the only way to do that, that's good, but the only way to do that successfully, I think, in terms of buying the right assets, is to make sure you really understand the market. And we've been talking about that for the last few weeks here as well. So it's knowing what the prices are locally, knowing how much competition, how much demand is, and knowing the right asset to buy. So if you're buying something to flip, for example, you know what the margins are, what it's going to cost you to renovate or rebuild. If you're buying something for home, it's understanding, what's desirable in terms of the area and where you want to be and the right number to pay. But the trick for me is if you're in a local area and say you're doing this where you're active, if you're building or renovating, or if you actively want to live there yourself, is to just have your eyes open the whole time, because people will drive past the same houses in the same street. and think, I've heard this story so many times. Oh, we bought a property, we weren't looking, but we drove past this same house, we loved it for 15 years, and then all of a sudden a for sale sign came up, and we bid it. We bought at auction and paid X or whatever like that. And it's like, but why didn't you buy that property 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 1 year ago direct from the owner? You knew the house that you loved.
Yeah.
You drove past it, you're robotic. And why didn't you action that and take control? And the best buyers take control, and they're looking, right? They're actively looking. The last property that we bought and developed in Mermaid Waters, we did a little waterfront townhouse development, and I had bought for my in-laws to move over from Christchurch 2 doors away from this property. I was at their house having lunch one day, and I noticed that the 2 doors away, the best one in the building in the whole block, was vacant, and always the 3 tenants used to be there with their fishing rods out into the water. We used to always see them there. They didn't work. They basically just lived there the whole time.
Fishing.
Yeah, fishing. The three guys in their 40s or so. And I was like, okay, that's interesting that it's vacant, right? It's finally been exited. And I went over to the building manager and said to him, hey, what's happening at number 14? And he said, the tenants have been there for 20 years, and they've given notice to get out, or the owner's given them notice. She's in Victoria, and she's going to bring it to market in February. She's going to do a bit of a tart up and then bring it to market. This was September. So I said to him, do you reckon you can get me through there to have a look at it while it's vacant? He goes, yeah, sure, no problem. So he took me through, I had a look at it, and I said, mate, what's it going to cost me to get it at down tools, and I'll buy it? And he told me, oh, this is the price that I told her. And I was like, okay, interesting. So I already knew that was below what I thought it was worth.
Yeah.
I then started a negotiation, and I bought it off market with them, and the rest is history, right? I think we made about $315,000 after tax on a property turn like that. I mean, we use it as our home. It was our principal place of residence, but it was a really great deal.
Yeah.
And it's because I had my eyes open, and I knew that there was value there. I understood the market value and was able to action it really quickly. So those opportunities are all around us. You've just got to take that drive.
Yeah, so we got to. So just to sort of recap, the things that I picked up on, and obviously it's all in the course, but it's knowing your budget, refining the area that you're going to focus on, be super targeted. So don't go wide, don't cast a wide net.
Laser focus
in on the area, because
Absolutely.
if you are laser focused in on the area, it's like a real estate agent. That's why they say know your patch, know your patch, know your patch. And that's why you'll find, the great agents
are area specialists. That's how they market
absolute
themselves.
Area specialists.
Yeah.
And so you as a buyer need to know your patch, right? And so if you then focus within that patch, you can then be monitoring everything that's happening in there over the course of time.
Yep.
Right.
And it only has to be a short time too. 4 to 8 weeks is what we talk about knowing your patch. If you can commit that time frame, then you're going to be at a serious advantage over other buyers.
Yeah. And then the second thing is the obvious, well, maybe not so obvious, is act as if everything's for sale but nothing's advertised. And then just have the courage to,
start a conversation.
Knock on the door, start a conversation.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yep. The worst you'll get is a no. Or a no for now, as I like to say.
No for now.
No for now.
Exactly. It's like dating.
Maybe for you. Mine was always a yes.
Okay.
Just joking.
Thanks, mate.
Hi, Bridget, if you're home, my wife watching.
Yeah, sorry,
Love
Lulu.
you.
I was persistent. So, talk about how to control a negotiation to secure it on your terms.
Yeah, and your timeline as well, as I mentioned in the intro. So controlling a negotiation, we'll dig into this in the coming weeks because this is a whole episode by itself and some, and it's a learnt skill as we talk about over 3,000 plus property deals that I've done. But controlling the negotiation is talking to an owner, giving them the reasons why the value of the property sits at X, so you can justify your offer, giving them a time frame to act, so it's not open-ended, and it doesn't just leave it as, hey Drew, love your house, I'll give you 500 grand for it, and that's it, which is what most people do. Oh yeah, I love it, I'll buy it for you, I'll give you 500 grand, and the owners go, yeah, okay, cool, well, yeah, let me have a think about it. And then the first thing they do is they call the local agent. What do you reckon? Oh, mate, I'll get you 600 grand. Don't sell it for 500 grand. And then you're gone straight away because they're going to go seek external help. So you need to give them all the information in that conversation. You need to say, guys, it's probably in that 450 to 500 range or 475 to 500. Here are the reasons why. So this just sold for this just sold for that, this just sold for this. This is you could break it down. This is the square meter rate, or this is inferior, superior, comparable, whatever it might be, as we do when we do our analysis for you. So you could have all that information ready, set, and packed up.
Yep.
And then when I present it to you, Drew, I'll say, okay, here's my offer. Here's the reasons why I made that offer. I'm not lowballing you. It probably sits in that range. Rather than be cheeky and start at the lower end, I've just done an Elon and moved straight to the end. I'm offering you 500 grand, which I believe is top weight for it. And let's put this into perspective as well. And this is really important, what I would always say to a private seller off market. Let's put this 500,000 in perspective, because agents are going to tell you they can get you more for the home. You know, all agents are going to tell you that because they want to get their listing fee out of it. But selling to me today privately is going to save you $10,000, which is 2% of 500 grand, probably $3,000 worth of marketing costs, 3 months or 4 months of wait time potentially, and then maybe any styling costs or anything else you need to as well. So you've got to factor that in, plus what's your time worth as an owner, stress levels and the rest of it, to take the bird in hand that's here now. So my 500, even though I'm saying to you, is probably top of the market for what it's worth, based on these comparables that are indisputable and that have just happened in the last week or two, it's actually probably worth 525, or 520 to 530. And that's how you sell it to them, to control that negotiation. And that's going to engage them then. And maybe they come back and say, look, I really want 510. And you might have to pay 555 or 510. But if it's the right property and you go in with the right comparables, you can control that to your benefit and get the best outcome. You also get to control the terms of the sale as well. So at that point, and you're not competing with other buyers, you can say, well, this comes with a few conditions as well. I'll give you this top price, and the reason why I've come in at that high number and not the low end is because I need you to do a couple of things for me as well. I need you to give me access to the property between exchange and settlement. Whatever the conditions are that you need, I need to come in and get some quotes with builders. I'd need a 3-month settlement instead of the typical 42 days or 30 days or whatever it might be in your state. So you can stack those conditions in, and you can use them to say, and that's why, because of these things, I've come in at that high number. And that gives you, and if you get a yes from them, then you get all the terms you want, you get the timeline you want, and you get the price you want. So it's really about controlling that process and being really organized up front. The lease, if you forget things off that list and you miss detail, it's going to invite them to talk to agents, and as soon as you do, it's going to be you're competing against more buyers, because every agent worth their salt is going to say they've got people for it and they can get them more money, and then that door's wide open to competing against emotional end users.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so what I took away then was you've got to really know the numbers. You've got to understand, and you can only really know the numbers on what market value is, or fair market value, to secure it then and there without the person wanting to go elsewhere, is to be tracking and have done all of your research. Really thought through thoroughly how you're going to present that to the person.
Have a structure.
Have all the structure laid out. Dot the I's, cross the T's, and be confident and just make it happen.
So in a nutshell, really, your job is to make it easy. Make it simple and easy for the seller to accept your offer. And you're only going to do that by being really well prepared in advance.
Cool. And obviously, you don't want to be disrespectful and lowball someone. Like, property owners aren't stupid.
It also gets you nowhere. You don't learn anything about it. So if you offer well below, all you're going to get is a no. And then a no doesn't give you any information around where the seller is motivated to sell at. So then you've got to start bidding against yourself. As soon as you start bidding against yourself, it's easy for a seller to say no, because every time they say no, you keep coming back with more money.
Yeah.
So then human psychology means I'll just keep saying no
Yeah.
and expect you to keep paying more money,
Yeah.
right? And so you just end up bidding against yourself, which is pointless. So you're better off, and we talk about this a lot in the course, my 95 to 97% rule. You work out what the market value is, you have a very clear idea of what you need to pay, and then you offer in that 95 to 97% range, because that either buys the property first up or it engages the seller and you get a counter offer because you're so close to where market value is, or your perception of what you want to pay based on what market value is.
Good.
So it's important. Now, a couple of the things I wanted to touch on as well is we talk about this a fair bit, and it's a lot in the course as well. But really, it's to understand why we're talking about this and why it's important. Because you might think, oh, this is random. Like, how many properties could be potentially in my area that I could buy off market compared to what I see on Real Estate or Domain come up, when there's 10 properties a week that come on that might fit my criteria. It's definitely the long game. Like, it's the harder route trying to buy off market than it is buying something off realestate.com, in terms of you've got to unearth these things and you've got to do some extra work. But seeing up to 40% more of the market when you buy pre or off market, which is what the statistics are from what we understand, enables you to just drop all your competition or seriously reduce the amount of emotional end users that you're competing against. So if you take the heat out of the market in terms of buyers you're competing, you'll certainly save probably tens of thousands of dollars in that situation. It could be a lot more. But it also allows you, as we've just explained, to control the terms better. So it's really important that you get to these properties, if they are on the market or they're about to come to market, on the real estate portals or through a real estate agent, get there first at the very least if there's nothing else you can do. But in a perfect world, get there before all of them and create these opportunities yourself for those reasons.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, no, and also I think it's a bit of being consistent. A mate of mine bought just an amazing property in Byron Bay, off market. You'd think Byron Bay off market. How the hell did he do that? He identified.
Did he overpay through a buyer's agent?
No, he didn't. He did the old, heartfelt letter in the bloody mailbox trick.
Nice.
And door knocking at the same time. So identified exactly where he wanted to be, and then just put a nice personable note in the letterboxes in the target area, like in the street, and then did the old door knock, introduced himself. And his approach was, I'll play the long game. And it was, just courteously, if at any time in the future you make a decision to sell, call me.
An interesting thing, if you do the reverse of the thinking from the sell, put yourself in the seller's shoes for a moment. Most people don't like working with agents. They don't want to pay an agent's fee. They don't like agents to start with. They have a poor reputation. I was one of them, so I'm happy to say that. It's definitely the case. So if you play that game where there's 500 letters go out or 1,000 letters go out, you will find people that put their hand up and say, I'll sell privately, because they don't want the stress or the privacy issues of people coming through their home. They don't want to have to kick a tenant out, so they've got a period of no rent. They don't have to show a property that's tenanted that's going to maybe get them a lesser price because the presentation's not perfect. So there's always people that are looking to sell off market on the quiet. Another good thing that you could try, the last couple of years I've bought a few times for clients that have brought me homes to negotiate on that they had found in Facebook community groups. So, they were on their Mermaid Waters group or their, Chapel Hill group or whatever it might be. There's these specific Facebook groups for different local communities. It's all across the world. And going in there and saying, hey, my name's Scott, family of 4 with a dog. Here's a picture of my beautiful kids and the dog. And we want to buy a 3-bedroom house in Chapel Hill, and we've got, X amount to spend. If you know anyone thinking of selling privately or thinking of selling, let me know. And twice for clients, they've unearthed properties that were gold, amazing. Like really good buys. And we were able to secure those at great prices on their behalf because they'd done the hard work unearthing those gems.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's go to that one.
Let's go. Yeah, let's dive in. There was a question from the community. So the question was, what should I do when a home pops on the market when...
I wasn't even looking.
Yeah, I wasn't even looking to move, but it suits our needs if I could secure it at the right price.
Yeah. And how do you deal with the selling agent who knows all of our personal details already, our personal circumstances? Yeah. So this is from Kate in Newcastle. Thank you, Kate. It's a really interesting question. So to give it some background, Kate owns a property 6 doors away from the one that is on the market for sale. They were very happy and going to build their family home their forever home on this site, which they currently live in.
Mm-hmm.
One came up 6 doors down with the same aspect, but the perception is their property is worth X and that they could buy this other property for Y. And the turnaround price would be much better and worthwhile them doing it. But they weren't actively looking. They weren't even passively looking. They just randomly saw it. And unfortunately, the agent knows all their personal circumstances. So they know they've got a house 6 doors up. It's very difficult. There's not much smoke and mirrors because all of it's sort of on the table. So Kate's question to me was, well, what do I do? Like, how do I work out the price of that house? How do I control that negotiation to win it? And then how the hell do I get around the fact the agent knows, what our motivations are for buying the house and, the fact that we need to buy it cheap, otherwise it's not worth us moving at all, and how to balance that with, do we promise them to sell our house and those things as well. So a really interesting question and probably something that doesn't come up a lot, but I thought it was a really good way to work out how you can structure that offer. So I thought there was a couple of key things.
Isn't the obvious answer get a Hello House?
Yes, well, she did, right? This is the thing. So she did, but I was coaching her on what we would do to control the situation. So this was a good question and a fair one. So the first thing is, I think you need to talk about what the property is worth to you and the reasons and motivation for you buying the home. So it only works for us if we can buy it at X price because otherwise we're happy and set in our plans. We don't need to make an emotional offer. We won't be making an offer that starts here and we get engaged in the process and keep bidding. So we've done our research around X. We're prepared to pay that number, so we're not going to lowball you. We're just going to go straight to that number, and it either works for you or it doesn't. We won't engage any further than that. And also, we're really busy with life. We've got kids, we've got things going on, work's busy. We don't want to be engaged in this process for days as well. So without being rude, if the owner doesn't accept our offer within, say, 24 hours, we're also out and most politely, but please don't call us again. We're not emotionally invested in this process.
Oh, amazing.
So that deliberately flips the switch, right?
Yeah.
The responsibility now is on the agent.
Puts a sense of urgency on the other party.
Absolutely. So you were coming at it with no urgency. Now all of a sudden you've created urgency. Yeah. So you've flipped the switch and put the pressure back on the seller now to make a decision. You've given them a fair price. You've told them you're not negotiating anymore. So that's it. That's the price. So if you want to sell to us, that's the number. So you've killed off that emotional process where the agents love to get you involved in the process and then gently push you up 10, 20, 50 grand to get you to pay more once you're invested in that home. So that's one really good thing. The other things I wanted to talk to her about was, talk about the cost of construction. That's very topical at the moment. So, it's only worth X to us because, what we perceived we could build the home for is now out of whack with reality. So, we're going to overcapitalize on this house if we pay you any more money. And that's the only reason we're buying this house is to build a house, right? So we're going to build new.
Build costs could be up 30-40% at the moment.
Yeah, so use it to your advantage when you're negotiating. The other thing was interest rates. So I said to her, well, let's put interest rates into this mix as well because 6 months, or less, we were dealing with 2% less rates and pressure still to go further. So use that and say, look, our borrowing capacity is going to pull back. So are all the other buyers, unless you're going to sell to someone that's buying cash. That's going to impact our development finance or construction finance, all these things as well. And that's another reason why we're pegged to the level we're at. Yep. So you're really saying to them, we've thought about this. We're not just throwing a random number out to you.
Throwing a lowball offer at you.
No, it's a very deliberate strategy. We've thought about this really clearly. It's clinical, it's not emotional, and well thought through, and it works for us at that number or we walk. So you've given them reasons that they can go back to the seller and push them to drop their expectations. So rates, increased building costs, and everyone was going to build because it's basically a knockdown house.
Yep.
You've given them the reasons why it works for you at a certain price based on where the value sits, and you've created a sense of urgency. So doing that just transforms that whole negotiation from here, we're 6 doors down and we really love the location and we'll possibly overpay for it to, we're going to do it on our terms or we're not going to do it at all. The other interesting thing that I talked to her about, I think that most buyers wouldn't think of, is I said to her, just pretend for a second that you've had another couple of leading local agents go through your house. And when you're talking to the agent or we talk to the agent on your behalf, we'll say, listen, we thought our home was worth, say, 1.3. That's where our expectations were. Yep. But whilst we saw yours on the market, we wanted to get a really quick indication of what ours was worth. Because the agent had said to her, I'll get you whatever price. I'll get you X straight away. Because she's trying to build the bridge, right? She's like saying, I'll get you this huge amount of money and you can buy this for a reasonable amount of money and it'll be a great turnaround for you. But I used that against her and said, okay, well, let's get a couple of people through your home and then hypothetically, let's just say, well, we had expectations of getting X, but those agents have told us that our expectations are too high and the market is Y. Yeah, and I did that deliberately because I'm like, well, if you use other agents as leverage in that situation and you tell them and you tell the agent, we got the other agents through for their opinion, but I said to them, look, I don't want the overinflated buy my business price, which is what agents tend to do when they go through to do a selling proposal.
Yeah.
We're seriously interested in buying another property in the same market. You don't have to tell them the address. And I need the worst case scenario. I want to know what it's worth today just so I can run my numbers on a base number. And that brings down the expectations straight away. So instead of maybe 1.3, oh yeah, we can get you 1.3, we'll get you 1.3. Now they might say, look, worst case scenario, 1.1, on a rainy day. And if we were really struggling with rates continuing to go, okay, great. Well, if my house is only worth 1.1, now the other house down the road is, its expectations are just dropped as well. So I dropped that into the conversation, right? Of course.
Yeah.
To use it to say, well, your overinflated price here to make this look like a great changeover doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So let's get real on price.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right.
Should we leave it there? I think we've given a lot of value already today.
We have.
We can talk about this one quickly if you want to, because we did say that we would refer to the data from Ray White that came out, and it's been used quite heavily in the media this week, nationally in the property media. Do you want me just to cover off on that really quickly? So if Ray White do ongoing data nationally for all of their auction officers that records the highest offer made during an auction campaign that was rejected versus what the property price was sold under hammer on auction day. And their stats nationally is it's just over 11% difference between the lower offer they knock back and the higher sale price that they achieve on the day. Now, they're out in the media promoting this as sellers 6 figures better off selling at auction, and they're pumping the tyres of their method of sale because that's their preferred method of sale. And if you dig into why it's their preferred method of sale, it's because it gives them the ability to underquote to buyers, overquote to sellers to win the listing, and crunch people over a 4-week period. So their days on market is short. That's the negative view, if I want to be really negative on why. I was an auction agent as well. I do believe that you can get great prices from auction genuinely as a seller, which is why we coach people not to be bidding at auctions as buyers. And there's plenty of great agents, but my negative cap, if we look at it through that lens, is that that data is skewed to fit their narrative or suit their narrative. So plus 11% better off to sell at auction is misleading, and it's because when an agent wins a listing, as we keep saying, they've got to go high, right? They go high because they're pushed by other inexperienced agents and less agents locally, and they want to give the owner nothing but good reasons to come to market. So they lower the barrier for the vendor to say yes. So they get the property on with higher expectations. They can't quote that price to get the property, any interest in the property and create competition with buyers. So they quote a lower price. And this is where we get this issue of underquoting in some instances if it's much lower than it legally should be, which is a 10% range. Now, I understand in some states like Queensland, you can't quote price with an auction property, so it's not relevant in Queensland, but for the rest of Australia, let's talk about it anyway. So what they're doing is they're underquoting to drive competition to the property. We talked about this last week about why they do that. But the reason why the gap's so big between the offers is buyers don't want to bid against themselves in the dark when it's a one-on-one negotiation and it's not in a auction environment where they can openly see who they're competing against. So week 1, week 2, week 3 of the campaign, if you're quoting 900 plus, for example, as the agent, I'd be hesitant as a buyer. Well, I know statistically they're hesitant to pay more than 10% above the range because that's what they know is the legal range. So they just assume, rightfully they should assume that because that's what the law is, that the agent's quoting 900, which means they've probably told the owner around $1 million, right? 9 to 990 is the range. So they're very hesitant to bid $1 million, $1.05 million or whatever to buy the property during the campaign when they're bidding in the dark. They can't see any competition. They don't get any confidence that there's other buyers interested at those levels. So they're fearful that they'll overpay, right? And also the agents don't want your offers. They don't want your offers for a specific reason because they want everyone to be sitting at this low price, thinking they've got a chance of buying it. add them to that pressure cooker, auction day scenario, add their seller into the pressure cooker auction day scenario as well, to beat them down on price, but get all the buyers competing against themselves so they compete and pay more for it. So they don't want your offers either. So that's the other problem. They're not encouraging high offers. And that's why these statistics really stand out on the page. It's plus 11%. It's because agents aren't requesting high offers and buyers are fearful to bid in the dark against themselves. And it's not until they see the whites of the other buyer's eyes on auction day that it gives them more confidence to bid further and start competing. Yeah. So that's why that statistic, I think, is misleading when you see it in the paper, and it got massive airtime in the property media nationally this week.
Yeah. So my take on all of that was, why would why would you just accept that it's sort of fait accompli to go and buy a property at auction? Why wouldn't you do everything that you could to negotiate before auction and just control your own destiny rather than become the part of that frenzy buying competition on auction day and
part of the theatre,
pay the emotional premium?
Yeah, it comes back to the same words that we always talk about, isn't it? It's understanding value in the market, so knowing what prices people are paying and how often those properties come on the market, and it's understanding what your true buyer depth is that you're competing against. If you know those things, then you can confidently make pre-auction offers. Yeah. And you'll know when agents are underquoting, and you can just put that aside and make your offer in good faith because you totally understand where it's going to run to on auction day if you let it run. Yeah. So if you knew it was going to sell for 1.1 in that example and they're quoting 900 plus, well, then you'd have the confidence to bid $1,010,000 or $1,020,000 because you'd be buying it for $80,000 less than it's probably going to get to on auction day. Yeah. Yeah. So it all falls back to knowing what market value is and understanding the rate of which those properties come on the market and how many people you're competing against.
Yeah, I think it's also about understanding how to control the buying agent, how to control the buying process and the selling agent. And so, I mean, if most people are not that confident to do it, then they're just sort of showing up and...
Well, you get pushed into it by agents. So we've spoken about why agents don't want your offer. You need to turn around and say, well, that's great, you don't want my offer, but I want to make an offer. Yeah, and exactly. I'm going to make an offer, and by law, you've got to put that offer forward. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm already under offer at another property or whatever, and I've got external pressure to make a decision. Yeah. Like, you need to take control of the negotiation, control of the reins, and drive it at your own pace, and block out the agent and your buyer competition as much as you can. Yeah,
well, that's ultimately the Get Buy Ready course is all about that. It's teaching people how to control the buying process. Yep. Yeah, that's ultimately what we're trying to get you to do, is sort of upskill, so you're playing your game and you're not, playing the agent's game playing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Good. All right. Great call today. Lots of value. So, just if you've got any questions coming up whatsoever, please pop them down below in the comments, and we'll either address them throughout this week before our next call. And so, for us, we'd rather have these calls addressing the type of questions that you are, coming up against actually out there in the marketplace. So if you've seen the theme to how we're running the calls at the moment, we're basically following the course. We're going through find, analyse, negotiate, transact. We might jump around a little bit, but ultimately, if you have any questions whatsoever about what you're experiencing out there, pop them in the comment and we'll address them.
Yep. Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye for now.
See you next week.